Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is Wednesday, September 20th. Summer is over, and we're entering into fall. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to our call. If the things we discuss on this call are of interest to you, I certainly hope that you will be kind enough to subscribe to these calls and share them with other like-minded individuals. Today's call, not sure how long it's going to be, frankly, for reasons that will be obvious in the course of what I discussed today. We're being inundated with calls, texts, emails, from existing clients with specific questions, individuals that want our initial trust package, and general information coming from all sources globally. So, by the way, if you've not heard from me this week, if you've contacted us in the last week and you've not heard from me, you will hear from me this week, because after this call, I will be spending the rest of the week making sure that every text, call, and email has been responded to one way or the other. So let's go ahead and get started for today. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. And, of course, the most relevant piece of information would be a window for the potential reinstitution of the Iraqi Dinar. Given everything that's going on, I think it's fair to say that the dinar could reinstitute in country at any time, although I certainly don't want to see a reinstitution this late in a quarter for reasons that I've discussed frequently. The most optimal time, of course, would be in October, but anything from October 1st to November 15th would work for us, because that means that no taxes would be due until January 15th, and we'd be able to hold the currency to allow it to appreciate once it reinstitutes and then float it on the Forex. So let's go ahead and get into today's call. It's going to be a little bit different today, a little bit more of a political issue to discuss here, because it does affect, the currencies and the revaluation not only of the dinar, but other currencies and other things going on economically and globally. We've been doing these calls for going on 15 years, and it's only been in the last couple of years that we've really had to touch on the political perspective, simply because it has an effect on what's going on. So let me touch very briefly on quote-unquote Bidenomics, which the president has defined as growing the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. Now, that comment, like so many things he says, makes absolutely no sense. But let me try to parse it a little bit. He's referring here to the middle class and, for lack of a better term, the poor, the working poor, and somehow his policies are helping the working poor. Well, any economist knows that what destroys the middle class and the working poor are inflation and taxes. And that's exactly what Bidenomics is. It's inherently inflationary. And by basically removing the tax, quote-unquote, tax cut, the Trump tax cuts, theoretically the rich are paying their fair share. But, of course, by removing the Trump tax cuts, what they removed from the middle class and the working poor are all of the exemptions, the personal exemptions, the child tax credits. By removing that, you didn't reduce their tax burden. You increased it, because by removing the deductions, you've increased what's taxable to them. So this is not good. The inflation is the direct result of ending oil production, which is still going on, and it affects, most importantly, food, gas, and heating oil, which we're going to be needing in the near future. We've got an open border with between 5 and 6 million illegals entering this country. Of course, that hurts the middle class and the working poor even more. We have urban crime as the result of liberal prosecutors refusing to prosecute crimes. We even see flash mobs now literally destroying chain stores, forced to close their doors. And we've seen basically the destruction of the dollar, both domestically and globally. Now, from the narrow perspective of someone that possesses currencies, a weak dollar necessarily means a stronger IQD. So if we're completely and totally selfish and we care about nothing but the return on investment on the dinar, then we're okay with these policies. But if you're an American citizen who happens to love their country and is appalled at what they're witnessing, this is not good. Donald Trump, for all of his flaws, was unapologetically America first. Joe Biden is Biden first. He always has been. Everything he does is nothing more than proof of that. The policies that have been put in place that are literally bleeding this country to death cannot be the result solely of stupidity. That means they've been done on purpose. There's another agenda at work here. And it's unfortunate that we have to deal with it. But for those of us that have currencies, despite the fact that the dollar is going to be worth less when we exchange our currencies than they were, say, 2 or 3 years ago, the sheer volume of dollars that we will have means that we're going to be fine. That doesn't help the rest of the country. It doesn't help our families. It doesn't help our future. And we have a way that we can assist with that future, and I'll be getting into that in a moment. Before I do, I want to pose a question. Because the last few weeks, a lot has been going on. From the perspective of those of us that have currencies, it's all good news. But here's the question. Is anything that Soudani, that Alak, or that Barzani are doing is done in order to maintain the status quo, i.e., are the things they're doing ensuring that Iraq remains with a program rate for the dinar? The answer to that, in my opinion, is emphatically no. And let's just review this. Now, we know that the Parliament passed an unprecedented 3-year budget. Now, that budget cannot be funded at a program rate, despite the fact that Iraq currently holds more U.S. reserve currency than it's ever had before, doesn't even come close to funding the 3-year budget. So in my opinion, the only way they can fund that 3-year budget is to come out of a program rate. Now, the HCL has been delayed at present, but in my opinion, the only reason the HCL has been postponed is because they need a new exchange rate in order for it to be implemented. Now, the HCL, pursuant to Article 112 of their Constitution, is designed to, quote, maintain oil and gas extraction and for the distribution of oil revenues. And they need an exchange rate in order to accomplish all of that. So while the HCL is not fully passed yet, again, in my opinion, the only thing they wait on is an exchange rate. Now, over the last few weeks, there have been a series of critical meetings which also point to the fact that Iraq simply cannot function with a program rate. We see the meeting with the United States Treasury and the Central Bank of Iraq. The U.S. ambassador has met with Soudani. Delegations from the EU and the Saudis have also met with Soudani. And now Soudani is in the United States and is scheduled to speak to the UN this week. A brief release regarding the substance of that speech touches on a few things. The fact that Iraq is now secure and stable, that they plan on developing their agricultural and industrial sectors, that they want to increase international trade and tourism, and lastly, he's going to be speaking on progress with the monetary reform. And of course, monetary reform, in my view, is code for a change in the exchange rate. So that's where we find ourselves at present. There's no need to, prolong it and get into all of the weeds, because this is the important information that we need. The U.S. dollar is receding. The IQD is ascending. The nation state of Iraq is sovereign. It's secure. It's stable. It's beginning to develop its other sectors economically. And it's now a power player in the Middle East and globally. In the past, I've gone into discussions about the natural resources in Iraq. I've said it before, I'll say it again. In my opinion, Iraq per square mile is the richest country in the world. It's geopolitically located where the East and the West meet. So the Silk Road Initiative cannot function without Iraq. United States, China, several countries in the EU, several African countries, and even countries in South America are now negotiating with Iraq because the writing is on the wall. That's why, in my opinion, we could see the reinstitution in country at any time. Now, what we've discussed over the last 15 years, initially for Dinarians, but certainly over the last couple of years, its relevance to any American citizen is the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts. And we've discussed the benefits if you're a Dinarian, and of course we've added to that all of the benefits that any American citizen could enjoy. And I want to review with you why you should at the very least contact us to get our initial no obligation package. And after I explain all of this, any American citizen, whether you're a Dinarian or not, ought to at least avail themselves of this information because it's going to be vital to you. These are the reasons that every American citizen should establish for him or herself a package of irrevocable trusts. First, they provide the privacy and the anonymity not only that every American is entitled to, but that is currently under assault in this country. For those of you that have currencies or any asset that you think is going to appreciate substantially, by assigning that asset to the trust before it appreciates, no one will ever know that you even possess that wealth because it's off the grid. It's in your trust prior to its appreciation. But the issue of privacy is important for a number of reasons. Unfortunately, about half of this country doesn't like this country, doesn't like its founding, doesn't like its structure, doesn't like its government, doesn't like its ethos, doesn't even like Western civilization. And one of the things that a lot of the people on the left will say is they want to save our democracy. Now, this term, it's intentionally innocuous. There's something called neuro-linguistic programming. It's a tool of the left, and it's the ability to say something that the average person thinks means one thing when it in fact means something entirely different. So when you hear saving our democracy, the first thing you need to understand is we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional representative republic. What's the difference? In a democracy, particularly a pure democracy, majority rules. That's the law. In a republic, there are laws, and the majority must make sure that the minority is protected pursuant to those laws. Now, the same people that continue to use the term saving our democracy are the individuals that want to stack the Supreme Court. They want to end the Electoral College, which is the protection of the minority in presidential elections. We've also witnessed an assault on our Constitution, an assault on the First Amendment through censorship, an assault on the Second Amendment through red flag laws, and anything they can do, increase the price of ammunition, anything they can do to impinge on your Second Amendment right to keep, meaning to possess, and to bear, meaning to carry arms. As a matter of fact, the governor of Mexico just passed an edict where your conceal and carry rights are suspended for 30 days. Now, this is a test run of theirs. They've tried jumping in the deep end, and that didn't work. So now they're going to try to tiptoe in the shallow end. So they pick a situation, and they decide, we're just going to do it for 30 days. And then tomorrow, well, if we can do it for 30 days, we can do it for 6 months. Well, if we can do it for 6 months, we can do it forever. Fortunately, this governor has signed her political death warrant. She's done. I listened to her speech. She's a constitutional illiterate. It's scary that people this profoundly stupid are in positions of authority. But unfortunately, this historically is what happens to republics. As a matter of fact, after we finally completed 16 years, we got the Constitution done, and someone said, well, what have we got? And one of the founders said, a republic if you can keep it. Understanding, this is Benjamin Franklin, understanding that republics don't last very long. Well, ours has lasted 240 years with a document that's several pages long. So it was beautifully constructed, and hopefully it will protect us. I know I'm going into a little bit of detail here, but things are not looking good in this country right now, and we need to protect ourselves. And for those of us who are fortunate enough to purchase currencies and patient enough to wait for our payday, it's coming shortly, and we're going to need to do everything we can to protect it, because the people running this country are going to do everything they can to take it from you. Second reason you want to set this trust up is because it's going to allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny. Why? Well, because the only thing you will receive as an individual through your Social Security number is income streams. Everything else is owned by the trust. Now, especially with these currencies, when these currencies revalue, and if you own them in direct title, the magnitude of that revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, the IRS is going to spit out an audit. And again, because of the magnitude of this revaluation, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Now, that's a time-consuming, frustrating process, the last thing you want to be dealing with after these currencies revalue. However, if you've established our trust and you've assigned your pre-RV currencies to that trust, that means the revaluation will occur within the trust, not you personally. That's important for 2 reasons. First, there's only a 15% chance of an audit if this revaluation were to occur within a rather sophisticated trust package such as ours. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, it can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currencies to family and friends in certain situations. Now, philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial federal gift tax, you're going to need to give currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the post-RV lump sum after you have negotiated the exchange, that can be done outside of the trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give any of these individuals the post-RV lump sum, you can gift to them through the specially designed gift subtrust as part of our package. This way, you're allowed to gift the currencies through the trust pre-RV in order to avoid the federal gift tax, but you'll have control of the post-RV proceeds, meaning that you can manage, invest, and distribute the money for these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. This means that no one will know what's in your estate. No one will know what your heirs have inherited. Your heirs will have immediate access to their inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero. Under current law, the federal estate tax in excess of an estate of $10 million, the federal estate tax can be as much as 65% of your estate. But if the currencies are in trust and what they inherit is in trust, the federal estate tax is zero. Lastly, by establishing this trust, you'll be able to enjoy certain asset protection benefits, one pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package allows you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What this means is you can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So as an example, let's say you purchase 10 million dinar for $10,000. You transfer those currencies to our trust, and the currencies subsequently revalue. And let's just be conservative and say for $1. Now you have $10 million, but you can't be sued for $10 million because pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, you can only be sued for what those currencies were worth when you transferred them out of title, $10,000. Well, once a prospective plaintiff learns that they can only sue you for $10,000, not $10 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's an asset protection benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop loss. This will protect you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. This is why you place each individual asset in its own separate subtrust to isolate it. The example I like to use is your car. Let's say a post-RV, you've purchased a home, a vacation home, cars, boats, etc. And as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust. Well, one day you're driving one of your cars, you have an accident. The accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiff would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and a car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other wealth and assets are safely protected in the other subtrusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question. Therefore, the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue them. So your trust package works very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your trust package prior to the revaluation of your currencies, if you are, in fact, a holder of dinar and other currencies. But as an American citizen living in a high surveillance, high tax state with the eminent implementation of a central bank digital currency, you need to establish a package like this, again, to protect your privacy, to protect your wealth from civil suit, and from the federal government intrusion into your personal life. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, financial assets like banking and investment accounts post-RV, and is authorized to manage the other sub-trusts. One gift sub-trust, which is an optional sub-trust, which can be converted to a standard sub-trust at any time, and 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold financial assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this trust package is the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Dinarians some 15 years ago, we knew that price tag would be unaffordable for many. So by simplifying the package, we've reduced the cost to $3,000. There are several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500. That's not possible. We have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum basically offsets our out-of-pocket cost just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the dinar revalues globally, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their trust in force and their affairs in order pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Now, I do want to go to a Q&A, but before I do, I want to tell you a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you should seriously consider contacting us to get our initial no-obligation package. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney now for over 41 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for now 40 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 80 years' experience working precisely in these areas, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, it's important that you understand that under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them or lose them outright. Things can go wrong from time to time in our lives, but we want to maintain control of financial wealth irrespective of such things. If you've lived for any length of time, you've experienced directly in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, but particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you anticipate a substantial increase in value. We at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand it. Again, thanks so much for listening to our call. If you're a new caller, we are going to go to a Q&A here. While I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. Again, if the things that we've discussed are of interest, and particularly if you're interested in getting our initial no-obligation package, you can learn about us by going to our website, trustsunlimitedllc.com. If you would like to get our initial no-obligation package, you can do so by going to our email or by phone. Our email address is trustsunlimitedllc@gmail.com, and our phone service is 307-274-4122. Again, contact us by email or phone. We'll be happy to send you our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, but you're under no obligation to do so. The package has a lot of information about us, about trust, about the currencies. You can review the package, contact us by phone or email. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to assist you. There will be no consultation fee. And again, for all of the individuals that contacted us over the last 3 or 4 days, if you have not heard from me, you will hear from me this week. I will be on the phone immediately after this call, and I'm going to stay on the phone until I contact each individual that has a question, whether they're an existing client or a prospect that just has a few questions before they decide to proceed with the establishment of their trust. So let's go with the Q&A here. Our first caller is area code 479. That's 479. Go ahead. Hello, 479?
Yes, sir. I bought a trust from you a few years back, and I've called and left messages. Is there any way that you could help me out with that? Take my number and get me in touch with somebody.
I'm writing your phone number down right now. You're probably one of the blitzkrieg that we've gotten the last week, but if you'll just be kind enough to give me your first name.
Jake.
Jake.
Oh, well, probably okay. Jerry.
Okay, Jerry. Jerry, I got it. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I've got your phone number here.
I won't keep you. Thank you for all this you do for
certainly
us.
You'll hear from me right after this call. Bye-bye now.
Okay.
Our next caller is area code 301. That's 301. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. It's Larry from Maryland.
Yes.
2 basic questions. One, the concept of the Basel compliance with the currencies, is this a process, all the currencies, or is it a process, or is it an event of all the currencies doing this? And then where does the U.S. dollar fit into whatever changes the Basel compliance brings?
Okay. Basel compliance is a 5-phase process, Basel 1 through Basel 5. This is the global transition from fiat-based currencies, meaning currencies based solely on the full faith and credit of a given central bank of a country and whatever they establish the value of the currency is. But each phase means that there has to be more gold and or commodity backing the currency. So Basel IV means at that level, percentage-wise, the currency will be based on the known natural resources in that country and their ability to bring them to market. But that is a percentage that goes up each year. We just entered Basel IV this year. I think when we hit Basel V, that's going to be the end of the line for the fiat-based currencies. The fiat currencies also pose a problem globally because countries like China can artificially devalue their currency in order to corner the trade market. So what's going to happen is it's going to be a 1-to-1, meaning that the currencies will have to be legitimately based, again, on their known natural resources and their ability to bring it to market. The problem with our country, unfortunately, is that the current administration is retarding our ability to bring those known natural resources to market, which not only has an inflationary effect on us domestically, but devalues the dollar globally, which is why I say no one can possibly be this stupid, so there must be something else going on because we're being injured by this policy. There's no way to get around it, But that's in essence what Basel is, the transition away from fiat-based currencies. Now, we've been operating since maybe 1971 under a Keynesian economic policy. It's debt-oriented. So, as an example, the federal government can just go to the Fed and say, hey, we need $500 billion to do X, Y, or Z. Well, in order to be Basel compliant, they just can't produce currency because it has to be backed. If we don't have the backing, the Fed can't produce the currency, which means they can't keep borrowing. So it's a yin and a yang. There are people that don't want to see this happen, and that's one of the reasons why Basel was being introduced phased in instead of just saying, well, we're going to switch over. They knew they couldn't do it. So they're doing it slowly, but unfortunately countries are resisting it, and unfortunately we're one of them.
So is there an actual timetable, or is it like everything else? It happens when it happens?
Well, when it happens, but there is presumably a timetable. What's going to happen is the currencies that aren't in compliance are going to fall to the wayside, and the USD could be one of them. I mean, we're looking at $33 trillion in debt. You can't borrow money to pay back debt. It can't be done.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into in my opinion, the criminality involved in all of this, but this is where we find ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
This is another reason why after we go to the bank in exchange for the USD, we're going to transition to tangible assets or perhaps even other currencies. Because, we're going to go to the bank and we're going to get a big chunk of change that we didn't have the day before, but that chunk of change is losing value every day. It's got a leak and the boat is sinking, so we're going to need to make some other arrangements before we sink.
Okay. Then coming back to the dinar, as far as the actual ability to do this reset, does it seem to be more that the government of Iraq is going through processes to finish things, or are they trying to eliminate, like the black market? Is there a sense, or is it just all kind of different aspects they have to?
I said there's three factors involving this. One is the money supply. There's too much dinar out there. That is solved with the deletion of the zeros. The second issue is economic diversification. They're in the process of doing that right now. And as a matter of fact, the speech that the Sudani is giving this week in the UN deals with, among other things, the diversification of their economy. And when they're doing all these contracts with all these other nations, they can't pay them in a program rate currency. They have to pay them in either the USD, some other reserve currency, or their own currency, which is why the only way the math works is for them to change their exchange rate, function with their own currency. The third issue is the one that a lot of these meetings are dealing with, and that is the corruption. So that's where we find ourselves. And of course, the street rate is along with the auctions was corrupt, and both other bad players like Iran as well as corrupt officials were skimming, and they're bringing that to an end. So that's why we're in a position now for the release of the lower denoms and a change in the exchange rate.
So once they reach that comfort level that they can push those buttons, then it's all good.
Yeah, and in my opinion, that could happen at any time.
Any time, right. Okay, thank you.
But I don't want to see it before October 1st.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
That too.
Okay,
thank
Larry, you take care. Bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 808. That's 808. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello? Yes.
Hello. Hi, Jim. It's Daisy from Hawaii.
I know. Well, that laugh really came away.
Am I the only person in Hawaii that's still with you? Because I only ever hear me.
I appreciate you getting up this early for our live call. I'm afraid that, what is it, like 5 in the morning there?
Oh, no. It's already almost 20 to 7.
Oh, okay. That's still pretty early.
Yeah, well, yeah. My day starts at about 5. Normally. I've tried to get on, but anyway, my only question is, do you know where we're going to go to do our exchange?
Well, presumably we'll be going to one of the four major banks. I'm pretty sure the way the current administration's handled regional banks and credit unions and all of that, they were never part of the plan anyway. But of course, you have to have the first of all, you have to deal with foreign currencies, and you have to have the ability to do the exchanges, because the formulation for doing an exchange for, say, a rupiah is going to be different than the dinar or the dong. So you've got to have that level. So I think what will happen is it will be pretty clear what banks are involved, and I myself am going to just call the banks and try to cut a deal for our clients, explaining who we are, and for my own personal reasons, I want to see what kind of deals they offer, and then make my decision. Then I think 3 of the 4 banks are within driving distance. I mean, a few minutes from my home, but with my luck, the one bank I want to go to, I'll have to get in the car and drive for a couple hours. But if that's the deal, that's the deal. But we shouldn't have a problem.
Okay. Well, I was thinking, I brought my yeah.
The problem you have in Hawaii is if you really prefer a particular bank that's on the mainland, you're going to have to get on a plane. I do not want to get on an airplane with my currencies. I just don't. I'll be a nervous wreck, to be honest with you. The way things are going with the airlines right now,
Yeah, that's my fear also.
Yeah, right. Because I'll be sitting there, holding this thing with both of my arms in my seat, and everyone's going to look at me like, if that thing's ticking, we're in trouble,
Right.
So,
well, maybe we should have it ticking.
There have been situations where people have had their currency confiscated at airports.
I can trust that.
Well, if you're taking an international flight, or even if you're in an international airport and you have currency, there is something called a FinCEN report that you have to file. And so people, they say, well, the currency's not worth anything. Why do I have to file a FinCEN? Well, but you got $10 million in face value. It's only worth $10,000. But the TSA, they don't know about that. They don't understand any of that. They just see a chunk of money, And so, like I said, I'm just not going to an airport. I'll get in a car and drive somewhere, but I won't go to an airport.
Well, I can't drive to Oahu because that would be, to me, where they might have a bank. That's the biggest,
I think you're going to be. I think we're all going to be fine. We're still going to have the process of negotiating once we get there, but I don't think we're going to have a problem.
Okay. Well, you can be sure that I'll be looking for you.
Okay, Daisy. You take care.
You take care. Thank you. Bye.
Well, she's pretty chipper for 7 in the morning. Okay, our next caller is area code 281. That's 281. Go ahead.
Hey, hello, Jim. This is Robert calling you from Texas. And
yes,
been with you for a while, and I'm really excited, just like everyone is. But I have 2 questions for you concerning the dinar. Question number 1, as it was with the Kuwaiti dinar when Clinton was in the White House, don't you think that this dinar will help do something to reduce our debt?
Well, the federal government holds a substantial amount of dinar. A portion of the Kuwaiti dinar was utilized to reduce debt, but the problem is who's in the White House right now. If Trump was in the White House, he would probably use that money to substantially reduce the debt, do some infrastructure work, certainly finish the wall. I think the bunch that are in there now are not going to reduce the debt. They're just going to sprinkle that money on all the people that are going to make sure that they get reelected and just spend it on other things. They're not going to reduce the debt, in my opinion. That's what I see. So it's unfortunate, but that's another reason why we need to transition away from currency too, because the dollar's going to lose value if they just throw all those dollars, instead of reducing the debt. If they spend that money, that just puts more money into the system, which creates more inflation, and which is a reduction in the purchasing power of the dollar, not the increase in the intrinsic value of tangibles, but the reduction in our purchasing power. So it's unfortunate that, and as a matter of fact, the other way to look at it, it might be that the government is doing everything they can to get this done now because they want the money to spend it. And if they were to lose an election next year, they know that a Republican administration would certainly use a substantial amount of it to reduce the debt, if not all of it. So, we'll just, what I'd rather do is audit the Fed, and to the extent that they've done things they shouldn't do, just shut them down and say, we're not paying back the debt to a crook, So
yeah.
We'll just have to see how this plays out. But
yeah, I agree.
Speaking, this bunch is not going to reduce the debt. They're going to spend the money on God knows what, on putting 500,000 charging stations in the country and getting rid of combustion engine vehicles altogether, which is controlled movement.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
Well, I agree with you there. My second question is concerning the actual exchange itself. I was in Kuwait as a civilian. I'm retired military, but I was in Kuwait as a civilian, where I acquired, a substantial amount of, my dinar. And, some of us have, 40, 25 notes is $1 million. Some folks have stacks and stacks, of currency, right? What is the exchange day going to look like? I can't see going into a teller with stacks of dinar to exchange. Don't you think we're going to have like private appointments where we can, do some exchange, in privacy?
Okay. First of all, anyone that has one of our trusts, one of the supplemental documents that they got was something called the exchange protocol if you have a trust, which basically walks through the process and gives you the do's and don'ts. What I think is going to happen is you're not going to deal with a teller. You're going to deal in an office with someone that's specifically there to do exchanges. Now, you might be able to walk in and get lucky, and they'll handle you right on the spot. What's most likely going to happen is you'll have to set up an appointment, or you'll just know to call in and say, look, I want to exchange currency, and you'll set up an appointment that way. And, of course, it's arduous if you have a lot of 20, they're going to have to go through. It's going to be a little bit of an arduous. First, they have to ascertain how much you have, and if the Delaroons say that it's, legit, it's not counterfeit, it's legit currency, then you have the process of the negotiating, not only the price, but even the cost to do the exchange, anywhere from 1% to 2%. Then, of course, the bank's probably going to do their dog and pony and tell you they'll give you a little bit better exchange rate if you put the money with their asset managers, and you're going to have to deal with all of that. But it should be, beyond that, it should be straightforward. Here's my currency. It's legit. The Forex rate today is such and such. I expect to get that rate, less whatever the transactions fees are. And that's pretty much how it should be.
Okay. Okay. So when we say, well, I have this trust that I want it exchanged into, and, they push back and say, well, we have our own trust that we'd rather see you do, what do we do in that particular case?
Myself, this is what I would say hypothetically. I have 10 million dinar here. You make 20 grand by pushing a couple of buttons, and my money's going to be in your bank for at least 10 days. We use my trust, or I go across the street.
Okay. That sounds powerful. That sounds strong. That's a posture.
We call it it's the Jed Clampett effect. It's your money. That trust is a legal trust. If the bank is so narrow-minded that they want your money dealt with their way, personally, now I know some people will do whatever they want. They're going to tell you to stand on your head and whistle Dixie, and people are going to do it because they've never negotiated before. They've never had this much money before. They don't know how the banking system works. I can only tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you, Jim. That concludes my questions. Thank you so very much, sir. look forward to staying with you and everything you got going on after this. So thank you again.
We look forward to it, too. Bye-bye, sir. Our next caller is area code 763. That's 763. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. It's Monty Python from the horrible state of Minnesota. How are you doing?
It sounds like you're on the ocean or something.
Is this better?
A little bit. Well,
here, let me. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, I got 4, but hopefully the first 2 will go relatively quickly. Is obviously I've had a trust for you for 2 or 3 years now, and obviously we're not going to register for a tax ID number until it revalues. When we go to
you can apply. You need to apply for your EIN because you're going to need to present that to the bank so that they can set up the trust bank account. So it's not a big deal, but you need to apply for your EIN. The other reason you need to apply is on the off chance. It's rare, but on the off chance there is another trust with a close enough name, they won't issue an EIN, and you need to change the name of the trust. So my suggestion for you is to go ahead and get the EIN number. Hello?
Yep. Can you hear me?
I've lost you again.
I'll call back in and try it again. My apologies, Jim. I'll hang up and call back in.
Oh, no. Hold on a sec. Let me write down your phone number before you hang up. Why don't I call you after this call myself?
Okay, right. Sounds good. Thanks, Jim. Thank you.
I'll call you right after this call. Bye-bye now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, our next caller is area code 405. That's 405. Go ahead.
Hello, Jim. This is Doug. How are you today?
Hey, Doug.
Good.
How you doing? Okay. How are you doing?
Very good. Hey, I want to go back to last week's call, and having listened to it several times, I could like to get some clarity, because you were telling us that the money in the exchange for our dinar is coming from the U.S. Treasury. And so my question is, if we go to a bank, and, this would be no different than today, say you take a trip to Mexico and you come back and you have 5,000 or 6,000 pesos left over, and you want to go exchange those back to U.S. dollars, you go to the bank, you present the pesos, they give you the dollars. If we go to the bank with dinar and we have been watching the Forex, we say, let's say it's at $3, we want to exchange our money now. How is it that money gets to us from the U.S. Treasury?
Because they can print it.
Wait a minute. I meant we're dealing on the Forex. The Forex is an international exchange. Pardon me?
Go ahead.
The Forex is an international exchange. They do, a phenomenal amount of trading on a daily basis. I think it's over $6 trillion a day. And from that perspective, I would imagine that the exchange for this money is being facilitated by the fact that there is somebody out someplace who wants to buy U.S. dollars for dinar, and vice versa. Isn't that how it works? I mean, how is it that we get entangled with the U.S. Treasury?
If there's an equilibrium in transactions, but this is why it's only going to be a few major banks that are in a position to take the dinar, because they can then go to the Treasury, or they can go to the Forex, or they can go to the CBI of Iraq if they want and negotiate something. The other issue is the federal government may decide, in order for us to be Basel IV compliant, we can hold the dinar as a derivative. So there's a lot of options that they have. But from our perspective, as long as I get, the Forex says one dinar is worth $3 US. As long as I get my $3 US, honestly, I don't care. But like I said, they have all these other options. They can hold it as a derivative. You know,
I understand. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just, I had written down my notes from last week that the statement was made that the money's coming to us from the U.S. Treasury, and it kind of confused me because I was thinking, how does the U.S. Treasury get involved with exchanges on
because we're exchanging the currency. We're exchanging the currency at a U.S. bank, and the U.S. bank is in possession of that dinar, and that U.S. bank is regulated by the Treasury, and the Treasury then has options whether they go to the Forex, whether they go back to the CBI of Iraq, whether they hold the currency as a derivative.
Okay, so from the perspective of the individual, you and I, we go to the bank. We don't really necessarily care what goes on behind the scenes, just as long as the bank facilitates our transaction, but it has to be done on what the value is of the dinar on the Forex at that moment that you exchange it. Is that correct?
Unless they can negotiate some other deal with you. It would be the Forex price less the transactions fees.
Well, yes, of course.
Or elimination of the transaction fees. If you're a good boy and you let that money stay in their bank, they may try to give you a deposit slip with a 21-day hold so they can float it. There's all kinds of things that they can do. I don't, as an individual, I kind of don't. On one hand, I don't care because we've been in this game a long time. We want our money. We want to do the things we want to do for ourselves and our family. On the other hand, I kind of do care because the people running the Treasury right now are probably not going to use the money to reduce the debt. So that's going to not hurt me, but it's going to hurt our fellow citizens and our families, because they're going to continue to have to incur that debt when it could have been eliminated. So, that's where we are.
All right. Okay, that was my question for today. And other than the fact that hopefully we're just a little bit closer, I know that Sudan is supposed to speak. Was it today, the 20th, at the UN?
They were supposed to be today, and then I heard this morning it was going to be postponed to Friday. But because I was preparing for my call, I wasn't able to, track it down and get an exact. But it's definitely supposed to be this week. And they did release, as I said, a little review of some of the things he's going to touch on, and one of them was the monetary reform. To me, that's code for exchange rate.
Well, that would be nice.
I don't think he's going to come out and say the dinar is now worth X against the U.S. dollar. I think he's going to come out and say that we're open for business and we're functioning as a sovereign nation with our own currency, something of that nature, which is, you can't function with that currency in a program rate. So if he says we're utilizing our currency, that means necessarily they're going to change the exchange rate. And I think all of the contracts going on right now are already based on an internal rate that they're using as an assumptive rate that we just don't know.
Okay. Well, let's hope that when it hits the Forex, it spurs a lot of activity and people that manage significant sums of money that have been restricted in getting involved in the dinar will have that opportunity, and it'll push the price up.
Well, it's funny, but the Kuwaiti dinar went up over $7 before it dropped back down. I think it was $3.46. There are people now saying that they see the Iraqi dinar going up as high as $9. So, and that's possible. It's sort of the way, like an IPO. It's moving on velocity, not the underlying intrinsic value. So, I don't know. I hope I don't get in the weeds with this, but if I see the thing moving along, it's be like, okay, I'm not going to exchange all of it. I'm going to wait a while, because if I exchange it all now at $3.62 and tomorrow it's at $4.81, I try not to get emotional. I always tell clients, don't get emotional about assets. Don't look back. Do the best you can with the information at hand and accept the result. But with the amount of leverage we're talking about, this is serious money.
Yeah, it would be. I know that you would eventually get over it, but it burned for a while.
Yeah, but yeah.
it would burn for a while.
Money's a drug. It's a drug, and it makes people do stupid things. Even if we get $1 for it, I mean, you pay $1,000 for $1 million dinar, and you get $1 million back, and to be disappointed at that is kind of scary.
Well, we'll be okay. Hey, thank you very much.
Certainly.
Hope there aren't too many more Wednesday calls.
I saved you for last.
Oh, well, thank you again.
Okay, Doug. Take care.
See you later.
Bye-bye. Well, Doug was our last caller. I can always count on him for a technical question. I'd like to again thank all of you for listening to the call. If the things we've discussed today are of interest to you, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. Once again, you're under no obligation by doing so. You can review the package, contact us. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to assist you. If you decide you wish to proceed with the establishment of your family asset protection trust, everything you need is included in the package. Our next call is scheduled, of course, for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye now.